Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Welcome to part 14 of my review of Masks of Nyarlathotep for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition by Chaosium. In this video I'll be covering part 3 of chapter 7, China. It'll be Madame Swallow, Mr. Wu, New China, and the chapter that is most often the campaign finale, Grey Dragon Island. The first section we cover is that of Lin Yanyu, or as she is known, Madame Swallow. The investigators can encounter her via the list of scholars obtained from the Shanghai Museum or discovering that they have been followed by her hirelings. There's also a pulp-only link whereby a letter to Neville German in Kenya is used. Her home, the House of Quiet Repose, is in the old city on Yuyuan Road and is well defended by courteous guards. Intruders are not afforded such courtesy and they can't be fast-talked or persuaded by anything less than a hard roll. They will deliver messages from callers and will make appointments for investigators. The letter of introduction from Mr. Mao at the Shanghai Museum handed to the doorman is quickly dealt with. All of her hirelings are trained in monkey-style kung fu and are absolutely loyal to her. There are at least 10 at her home and double that scouring Shanghai for Jack Brady and the 7 cryptical books of Hassan. They use hatchets as a weapon, which is emblazoned with a swallow symbol, making them easily identifiable. Unless they have already come across her, approaching her will be the same as with any other scholar, though if they believe she is working against them, they may opt to break in. She will only agree to see them if they possess the 7 cryptical books of Hassan or know where they are, want to sell a unique book or artifact, if one of the investigators is attractive, appearing 75+, or if any of them possess a skill she requires. If she agrees to an audience, it will be held at an incredibly tasteful and luxurious parlour. Those skilled in the likes of appraise or archaeology will note several rare pieces on display. She'll be on a chaise lounge in front of a large curtain, with a cigarette in a long holder, and then ring a bell that brings in 2 immaculately dressed and attractive young men to serve tea to her guests, while a similarly attractive young woman comes in and serves tea to her on a separate tray, and then a 4th comes in to sit at her feet and play the piper or Chinese lute. There are several occult and mythos items displayed here, detailed later, and she will keep an eye on the investigators to see the spark of recognition. They'll be fully aware that they are being sized up. It then goes on to what they could discuss with Lin Yanyu. If she knows that they have the scroll of the 7 cryptical books of Hassan, she will politely ask for it to be returned, as it is in actuality rightfully hers. Should they be reluctant to part with it, she will offer them a finder's fee, or if she has time to do so, dish up any dirt she has managed to dig up on them. She has a network of informants across China who can easily find out about anything untoward they may have done. If they don't possess the scroll, she will bargain with them to get hold of it. If they know where it is but need assistance, she will offer some of her guards as help, even if Ho Fang has it. She will easily betray the investigators to Ho Fang to obtain the scroll, as she wants to stay on the right side of the order. On the side here we have some of Lin Yanyu's collection, though these are just suggestions. There's a well-worn copy of the I Ching along with a set of yarrow stalks, a copper statue of a strange snake-tortoise hybrid that can be identified as a creature from Chinese mythology called a Dark Warrior, a thangka, a Tibetan painting on a fabric or a scroll that can be identified as being human skin, that's showing a rendering of Azathoth's court with the demon sultan himself surrounded by piping servitors, which can cause sound loss, a Chinese translation of Secret Mysteries of Asia with a commentary on the Gore Nigral, a set of 9 bronze bells decorated with hunting horrors that can be used instead of a whistle to summon them, a golden ankh which is identifiable by those that know the Prince Crux Ansata spell, and a well-used copy of Sir Wade German's observations on the several parts of Africa. If the investigators offer to sell her an artifact, she'll be willing to bargain with them and will pay good money on the spot. She can be bargained with, though she is experienced in this and is hard to talk around, although attractive investigators of either sex, again those with appearance 75+, can have a bonus die when doing so. Threats or rudeness will be laughed off and not forgotten. If she has any method of blackmailing them, she will refuse their price and then use it against them. If they have any part of the Eye of Light and Darkness and are foolish enough to show her, Lin Yanyu recognises it straight away and wants it for her collection. She will offer money, something they want, or even an artefact of equal value. If they refuse to part with it, she sends people to steal it. In addition to all of the above, any attractive investigator, as detailed previously, will gain particular interest from Lin Yanyu. She will direct her questions towards them and flirt with them, male or female. She appreciates and wants beauty wherever she encounters it. She will also attempt to recruit those investigators who have skills she desires over 50% in a list here. As it gets near to the end of their meeting, she will get up and go to a side cabinet where she will take a cup containing yarrow stalks. She will then cast them onto the top of the cabinet and then say, PE Union with 9 in the 5th place, interesting. Then take one of the many scrolls from a lacquer stand beside the cabinet and then read it out loud. In the hunt, the wise king uses beaters on 3 sides only. For going gain that runs ahead, the quarry chooses its own fate, as pictured here. Then replace everything, then offer a gift to any investigator she has become interested in. Something of obvious value, insisting they take it. Could even be something that her people have stolen from them. An occult roll will note that she has performed the I Ching, an ancient method of Chinese divination. The investigators are then shown from the premises. Any investigator who received a gift will then get a note sealed with a swallow in flight, inviting them to dinner that evening. If they refuse or do not respond, then they will receive the same the next day and then one final attempt on the 3rd day. If they are all rebuffed, then they will never hear from Madame Lin again. As per the I Ching, she has used beaters on 3 sides, the gifts on 3 days, but the quarry, i.e. the investigators, has chosen to run free. If the invitation is accepted, they'll be greeted as an honoured guest at her home. They'll be entertained and dined lavishly in intimate conditions, and Madame Lin will prove to be a fascinating dinner companion, chatting away throughout the date. As the dishes are being cleared, she'll make them an offer. Join her as a lover, a personal attendant, or a member of her network. She assures them that they will be well rewarded, including protection from the danger they're facing. If they refuse, she will try twice more before abandoning any further attempts. If they accept, then their work as an investigator is done and they move into the employ of Madame Lin, who is an excellent if hedonistic employer. If she is interested in more than one, she will do this in a group. Should the investigators be able to convince her to talk, she can tell them that the Order of the Bloated Woman worships an aspect of a god called Nyarlathotep and that Ho Fang is their high priest, and that the cult holds its rights on Grey Dragon Island. She will also inform them that a powerful and dangerous magician called Carl Stanford is staying at Ho Fang's home. She will tell them that there are whispers of a powerful machine being built on the island, but that finding out information has been hard, and that Jack Brady stole the 7 cryptical books of Hassan from her, and that his girlfriend, Choi Mei Ling, has vanished, but she doesn't know where she is, though she can hazard a guess at a push. She also knows the Order seeks Brady, but is not sure why. In addition to this, she knows nothing about Sir Obi Penhew, though is aware of the Dark Mistress and his visits to Grey Dragon Island. She can mention that Jules Savoyard has been removed from her establishment in Shanghai due to being a very undesirable client. Should the investigators eschew this approach to Lin Yanyu, they may choose to break in, though this is hard due to her eagle-eyed guards. Aside from her art collection and previously listed mythos items, she has a safe in her bedroom, which aside from holding cash, has doses of the sleeping draught and snake venom her hirelings use. It also contains a coded ledger. If the cipher can be cracked and translated from Chinese, they will have some very interesting and valuable blackmail information on important Shanghai people. She'll stop at nothing to get this back and will be swift and brutal if anything can be tracked back to the investigators. This includes betraying them to Ho Fang. If they're caught while sneaking about, she's surprisingly forgiving, admiring their determination. If any of the investigators are those who garnered her interest due to being skilled or having a high appearance. If nobody caught her eye, she's far less forgiving, and they need to think quickly or face the possibility of being turned over to Ho Fang. The next section we come to is Mr. Mu. He can be discovered through being on the list of scholars from Shanghai Museum or identified by Choi Mei Ling if she's rescued from the shrine of the Bloated Woman. He lives in the old city and is a reliable authority on the occult and is very busy despite his retirement. He'll only agree to see the investigators if they mention the Order of the Bloated Woman or Jack Brady. If they choose to case Mr. Mu's house, they may see Jack Brady arriving and leaving. If the investigators get a chance to speak to Mr. Mu, they will come to realise that he needs them to be honest and has no time for deception. If they are honest with him, he tells Chu Min, more on him later, to have them followed and maybe even kidnapped so he can determine if they are a danger or not. As he is currently translating the 7 cryptical books of Hassan, as well as having Jack Brady hiding in his home, he needs to quickly find out if the investigators are a danger. Once he is confirmed that they are not a threat, he can tell them much. He will let them know that the Order worships some kind of primal dark goddess known as the Bloated Woman, and that they have grown powerful in the last few years. He says that only a small fraction of the murders committed by the Order have been found, and that they sever the arms of their victims, causing them to bleed to death. His belief is that they want to summon their goddess to Earth, and that to do this they are planning on either rupturing or poisoning the sky, and soon. Once this is done, a year needs to pass before the world is tainted, the stars are right, and the names of the Dark Goddess's pantheon are uttered in worship. Tulu, Ni-Ogtha, Yog-Sothoth, and Azza. He also hints of ancient knowledge that may thwart these events, but will go no further until Jack Brady meets them. It then goes on to recovering the 7 cryptical books. If the investigators have led the Order here, it shouldn't be too far a stretch to guess that they may have the 7 cryptical books of Hassan. The Order may try to take them back, with Carl Stanford leading the charge. If he succeeds, Ho Fang will put them in his shrine at his home, and Carl Stanford will leave Shanghai. Additionally, Lin Yanyu's employees may follow them if they have piqued her interest. She will send her hirelings to retrieve the books, coming to the conclusion that only Ho Fang, Mr. Mu and herself are capable of translating the scroll. It makes the point that the only way the investigators can find out about the books being at Mr. Mu's house is if he tells them or they burgle his home. Mr. Mu will not part with it until he has translated it or Jack Brady says he can. Mr. Mu's house is stout and secure, being surrounded by a 12-foot wall with only a single gate of entry. Optionally, Jack Brady has set up some traps for clumsy intruders, and there may even be guards. An indirect benefit of breaking in is that they will soon come face to face with Jack Brady, though he will need talking around if this is the case. Should the scroll be stolen and Brady survives, he will do whatever it takes to get it back, as this is the only way he can move against Sir Aubrey Penhew and interrupt Nyarlathotep's machinations. We also have a floor plan of Mr. Mu's house, as well as what I assume is a picture of the 7 cryptical books of Hassan. After this we move on to New China. These can only be discovered at various points in the China chapter and are a secret organisation of vigilantes of around 200 Chinese men and women from everyday walks of life. Their plan is to take out Shanghai's corrupt elements using assassination or bombs. They essentially commit terrorist acts to achieve their goals and are bankrolled by a rich radical called Sung Li. They have 4 affirmations: firm study, firm belief, firm practice, firm action. Their hit list is pretty much any person or group that has irritated them at some point. Though part of New China remembers to essentially let off steam, the firm action part of it, led by Chu Min, are dedicated to violence and train endlessly in weapons, martial arts and small unit tactics in a warehouse on Chungsan Road, which is being watched by Captain Isoge's agents. There are usually D20 plus 5 people here at any given time, and they gain experience by hiring themselves out to gangs and warlords, and they are considerably brutal. They are formidable given their size, resembling a well-drilled group of commandos rather than anarchists. They have plenty of weaponry and explosives, including mortars, dynamite and demolition gear gained from the Philippines black market. The foundry next door masks the noise they make, and the warehouse looks boarded up and empty, though eagle-eyed investigators can spot 2 guards at most times of the day. They can get access to firm action through Mr. Mu, Jack Brady, or simply breaking in. As previously mentioned, Mr. Mu may have them trailed and kidnapped or even invited at gunpoint to their warehouse. Should a fight break out, Chu Min may shout the name Jack Brady to try and calm the situation, which should hopefully be enough to pique the interest of the investigators. Chu Min will take the investigators to the office to talk, and Jack Brady is waiting there for them. How friendly he is depends on how they arrived. If they can convince either of them that they need help, firm action are willing and share the information they have. If they actually manage to get past the guards and break in, they can find records of arms shipments, a navigational map of Shanghai approaches that has a course to Grey Dragon Island marked, alongside a planning sheet with tides marked for various locations there. There's also a file that has the information on scouting missions to the island, all in military jargon Shanghainese. They can also find this handout here. Finally, after all this time, we get to meet Jack Brady. Obviously, we have a plethora of mentions throughout the book, but it lists all of the different methods by which they can finally catch up with him in the China chapter here. He's currently living in a secret room in Mr. Mu's house, hardly ever leaving, and only then mostly to visit the warehouse of firm action. Mr. Mu is the only person who knows he is here. Brady is there, waiting for his moment to act. If they instead decided to keep a watch on Mr. Mu's house, they can see him creeping in and out with a good spot hidden roll. If they then follow him, he will go to Firm Action's warehouse, the Autumn Morning Tea House, or even the investigators' own lodgings. If Brady spots them, it can lead to a chase scene, or him confronting them, depending on if he knows their affiliation. He will only reveal himself to them when he figures out whose side they're on, or via Chu Min, or he may simply appear one morning at their hotel. Though his sanity has been sapped, he is still sane, though understandably paranoid. He will hang around long enough to tell his story, then arrange a further meeting if needed. He will then leave and try to blend in with the crowd, which is difficult for an ex-marine in Shanghai. He could be spotted by Ho Fang or Lin Yanyu's people at this point. His statement, more on that in a bit, should cover almost everything the investigators want to ask him, as well as helping them decide their next course of action. He'll want to know what they've done so far and their plans going forward. It does make the point that if the China chapter is done early in the campaign, he can help them deal with Grey Dragon Island and Sir Aubrey Penhew, and maybe even tag along with the investigators if appropriate. He can tell them that Nyarlathotep is one god with many faces. He knows about the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh, the Order of the Bloated Woman, the Cult of the Sambat, and the Cult of the Bloody Tongue. He can even give names in Omar al-Shakti, Edward Gavigan, Zara Shafiq, Ho Fang and Tarn Kor, and hoped Jackson Elias would shed more light on these cults as he is no scholar himself. Should the investigators have impressed Brady with their knowledge of events or canniness, he will tell them about the armed assault Firm Action are planning against Grey Dragon Island and invites them along to join them. If all is agreeable, he will tell them to find a safe place and lie low, promising to contact them when the time is right. Should they ask him about the Eye of Light and Darkness, or even show him the half that they may have at this point, he will tell them that once the ward is broken, it is useless, but Mr. Mu's research from the 7 cryptical books of Hassan show that a new ward can be created. After they have learned the correct spell from the book, they can attempt toward the point of the triangle the Great Gate is said to appear in. The instructions must be followed to the letter, with the spell requiring quite a lot of blood. They will know the ward is working when the pupil of the symbol, shown here, begins to glow. Once activated, the symbol melts invisibly into the background of whatever it is inscribed upon and cannot be removed by physical or ordinary magical means. Nyarlathotep can teach his minions on Earth to destroy the wards if they can be found, but the current cultists do not know the correct procedure. If the Order of the Bloated Woman gets the 7 cryptical books of Hassan, they get a spell called Find Gate, which allows them to find the exact spot of the wards with ease. Currently, an agent of the god must be sent to find and destroy the ward before it destroys them. Robert Carlyle managed to shatter the ward at Dashur, but the amount of wards remaining is unknown. We also have a box out here explaining how the 7 cryptical books of Hassan can be deciphered and a drawing of the shattered Eye of Light and Darkness. Should the investigators inform Brady that Choi Mei Ling is missing, he will conclude that Ho Fang must have taken her and he must raid the mansion to free her. This, of course, puts the whole assault on Grey Dragon Island at risk. Chu Min will point-blank refuse an attack on Ho Fang, so Brady will beg the investigators to help him. If they in turn refuse, he goes on his own and is never seen again. If this is the case, Chu Min and Firm Action can be talked into going ahead with the Grey Dragon Island attack if they can convince him that they are capable. On the chance that the investigators actually never meet Jack Brady for whatever reason, there are a number of alternative options. Mr. Mu can still finish the translation and give it to the investigators if he trusts them. As an alternative, the Order of the Bloated Woman or Lin Yan Yu's people could find Mr. Mu, which would require the investigators to steal the book from the new owners. If they have already spoken to Old Bundari in Kenya, they should already know that a new Eye of Light and Darkness needs to be created. They can also take independent action against the cult and mount their own assault on Grey Dragon Island, with the potential of meeting Chu Min in the event of Jack Brady dying being at the Keeper's discretion. The final thing in this section is Jack Brady's statement to the investigators. As it's 3 pages long, I'll condense it down to the important points. Firstly, he introduces himself and then tells the investigators that they're all in a lot of trouble, mentioning telling Jackson Elias the whole story and thinking people would try to put an end to the cult. He asks if they are friends of Jackson Elias and then tells them that the cult is not playing around. He informs them that he knew from the start that Roger's little witch, referring to Mweru, was trouble from the start as she had him enthralled. The more he saw her, the crazier his dreams were. He liked the fact that they were going to Egypt as he thought that would be the end of her, explaining that he liked Carlyle a lot. He explains that the London trip was fun, but that Carlyle spent a lot of time with Sir Aubrey Penhew poring over junk that Warren Bassart had obtained from this Najjar guy in Egypt, mentioning the bust of the Black Pharaoh, and that Carlyle would spend hours staring at it, saying that there was also a map that he stared at for hours. Once they arrived in Cairo, Roger started having dreams about meeting a god, though he wasn't drinking and Mweru was not around. Brady noticed that the people Carlyle had invited on the trip started going crazy, and it was at this point that he knew that there would be trouble. He says that the moment he went off the deep end was when he explained to Brady that he could meet this god if he destroyed the eye and opened the path. He explains that Houston encouraged him instead of talking him down, and that on the first night they were up the Nile at Dashur, Roger snuck out and climbed the Red Pyramid. Brady says that he followed Carlyle, who climbed the pyramid with ease. Near the top, Roger put on a robe and made weird noises. At first, Brady thought that he had finally lost it, but then there was an explosion that had echoes and screams in it and a flash of red light. Carlyle told him the eye was gone and now they could be gods. When he went back the next day, the damage to the pyramid was non-existent, but he found a piece of rock that looked like it could have fitted where the damage was. Somehow he knew it had strong magic that kept evil at bay, etched with the design previously shown, so he took it, knowing that Carlyle had broken its powers. 2 days later, the whole gang gave Brady the slip, vanishing into the bent pyramid. Some of the messenger boys that accompanied them ran out shrieking, saying that the pyramid had eaten them and that the whole dig was deserted within 5 minutes. He went in but saw that nobody was inside. Eventually they came out. Carlyle told him that they'd been to the real Egypt, with Penhew looking younger. Everyone looked changed in some way. Nobody would explain where they had been, and from that point it was harder to find workers. He tells them that he would wake up at night to hear them talking to each other in a creepy lingo, and then one evening Roger told him that they were going to show him the extent of the power they had learned. They went into the desert with a group of Arab workers. Everybody started screaming, and Penhew started beating a drum that Najjar had obtained for him. Creatures started emerging from the ground and devouring the Arabs, while Roger and the others laughed, so he left sharpish. The next day Roger warned him that he had better change his attitude. After that they went to Kenya, and Roger filled him in on what had happened. He told Brady that they'd found the true God that would rule the earth, and that they would rule with that God, as they were the chosen ones the God had picked to open the way for his return. This made Brady listen. Every week Penhew seemed to be getting younger, while Hypatia Masters looked more unwell. He explains that they were travelling to Nairobi, to a place in the mountains that was fairly inhospitable and nobody looked friendly. Figuring that he wouldn't last long there, he made some arrangements. He drugged Carlyle, grabbed the cash box and got them on a freight to Mombasa. Shortly afterwards, his hunch that there would be trouble seemed justified as he read in the papers that the expedition had been killed, which he thought was a good thing, as everybody believed the pair of them dead. His arrangements went off as planned, and at Mombasa he found a fisherman that would take them to Zanzibar. From there they boarded a coastal trader to Durban, where they dyed their hair, got some decent clothes and went to Perth. He explains that on the way to Mombasa, Roger actually had some sleep and woke up different, away from the influence of the rest of the expedition and back to his old self. Brady told him that they were in big trouble and they needed to hide. He told Carlyle about the Arabs in the desert, and though he could remember it, he didn't seem concerned, but understood the reasoning behind the situation. Over the next week or so, the nightmares started and he began to lose his mind, remembering some of the things he had done. Brady explains that while he was in Shanghai with the Marines, he made some friends there, and by the time they got to Hong Kong, Roger could go no further, so he put him in a sanitarium there, using up most of the remaining money to do so. From there he went to Shanghai, genuinely believing that he would never see any of the expedition except Roger again. That was until he looked through a spyglass and saw Sir Aubrey Penhew on the deck of the Dark Mistress. Lastly, in this section, we have the instructions for the Eye of Light and Darkness. Finally, we move on to the last part of the China chapter, Grey Dragon Island. It lists all of the different ways they can learn of its existence, which includes a reference from Australia, and then we move on to the geography of the island itself. Considered a mere reef on most charts of the area, Grey Dragon Island is 300 miles southeast of Shanghai. It is a dormant volcano that has been silent for a long time and has eroded into a circular reef containing a broad lagoon. There is a small village here. It is only correctly labelled on British and Japanese charts, and the whole area is noted as treacherous waters. As a result, no country has laid claim to it. Sir Aubrey Penhew has used this to his advantage by having it as a base of operations for the construction of his rocket that he intends to crack the sky with in January 1926. The island is mapped out here, and then it goes into getting to the island in this section called Destination the Pale Viper's Lair. Two main methods are laid out, though there are probably other methods that the players could think of. The first is to stow away aboard the Dark Mistress, and the second being that they could hire their own boat to follow the Dark Mistress or Ho Fang's luxuriant goddess. This could be on their own or with Jack Brady and firm action. Should the captain of either vessel see them, they will radio Sir Aubrey and let him decide a course of action. He may choose to cast a Wave of Oblivion spell to attack the boat or tell Savillard to do so. On the other hand, he may allow them to arrive at the island and meet them with a welcoming party. If Wave of Oblivion is cast, then a combined dex and strength roll is needed to avoid being swept overboard where they have a chance of drowning unless rescued. A luck roll will allow a piece of wreckage to cling to, and they need to either drift or swim to shore. They may even wash up onto the island. Should Brady and Schumann's assault go ahead, then they will plan to attack the island on an overcast night with a rising tide, making sure that Ho Fang's yacht has gone too, with this being an indication that a ritual is to take place. Mr. Mu, having studied the cult practices, believes that there will be no cultists on guard during or shortly after the ritual, which makes it an ideal time to sneak onto the island and find out Sir Aubrey's plans. Should the number of cultists on the island grow, for example when the ritual on the day of opening is to happen, then Brady and Schumann will try to get more reliable fighters, with Brady even offering the 7 cryptical books of Hassan to Lin Yan Yu in order to gain her help. If he knows about Isoge Taro, he will give him every single bit of military information that he has. Should Isoge become convinced that what Brady and Chiyo are doing is honourable, he can offer considerable aid. We have a section called The Likely Scenario, where it details one of the potential plans. It surmises that Firm Action will send a scouting mission that will report back that there is a steady increase in cultists, which will be reflected in the number of ships leaving Shanghai Harbour. Firm Action will then capture a few islanders, who will, via interrogation, tell them that the Great Machine is in the volcano and that soon it will fly. Chumin and Brady will take the decision to land a few commando teams with the task of killing Sir Aubrey Penhew and destroying his rocket, with guns only used as a last resort. Mr. Mu will tell them that guns will be pretty much useless against the monsters that the wizards there can summon, telling them to be stealthy and decisive. Chumin will lead 6, Brady 6, and the investigators are their own group, maybe with a few martial artists or weapon experts to help. After this we have Into the Lagoon. When ships visit the island, they moor at the dock near the village. Approximately 20 Deep-One hybrids live in the village, with a number of them keeping a frog-like eye on the channel through the reef in case of intruders. It takes around 10 minutes to report them to Sir Aubrey via swimming to the chamber of the Bloated Woman. The island itself is ashen with the occasional stunted palm tree. Sand crabs populate the area. The village itself is around a dozen palm huts huddled among the trees, far enough into the island to avoid the sand crabs. There's not much useful here, and many statuettes of the Bloated Woman and lots of villagers wearing the Order's characters as necklaces, belts and the like. One of the huts contains lots of yellow and black robes for cultist visitors to wear. There is a lookout station built 35 foot up in the bough of a tree away from the sand crabs and well camouflaged. It is, however, just a perch with some binoculars. There is no gear here to alert people. In addition to all of this, there is an underwater Deep-One colony that can be called by ritual chants from the lookout station. Should the investigators make the choice to try and climb the volcano cone itself, it is steep but not impossible, with the climb roll only being required near the top where there is nothing other than the occasional burst of steam. There is a trail that leads from the village to a cave around 150 foot up the side of the cone that has an entrance decorated with the Order's characters, dripping fangs, tentacles, etc. From there, a set of twisting stone stairs lead down 200 foot into the cone. The place reeks of sulphur that will stain the clothes of the investigators with the stench for hours. On the night of a ritual, the villagers, along with some mainlanders, light torches and march chanting to the entrance. Disguised investigators could join the parade easily should they want to. The heart of the volcano is where Sir Aubrey's lair is contained, with the passageway leading to it carved with strange octopus-like creatures, bizarre fishmen and blobs covered with flailing appendages. These can be recognised with the Cthulhu Mythos role as Starspawn, Deep Ones and Shoggoths. At the bottom of the stairway downwards is the chamber of the Bloated Woman and the rocket he has built to open the Great Gate. It is a roughly cylindrical 150 foot tall cavern bathed in an orange light that comes from the magma in the centre. In the middle of this is a 75 foot tall gleaming metal rocket that is suspended on girders. At various points there are cultists making repairs and alterations. On the floor there are workers wearing strange headdresses and fishmen scuttling about between the dark water and the magma pit. Opposite the rocket is a huge pool of seawater, and far to the rear is an enormous 30 foot tall statue with its back to onlookers. This scene is sand draining. The chamber emits radiation from the magma, and the keeper is given the option of inflicting a penalty of some sort to those who spend too long here, with the suggestion of using something similar to the deadly thing in the firebox rules earlier on. The rocket itself is an impressive thing that Sir Aubrey has worked some stylish Art Deco motif into the hull of. The nose cone is not fitted yet, though as rocket science is fairly unknown, nobody would usually know this. Metal pipes lead from the magma to the rocket and they glow white hot and with a blinding intensity. All the workers wear goggles to protect their eyes. The pipes are otherworldly tubes that convert the magma into fuel for the rocket. A group of ragged human slaves are being pushed around by two Deep Ones with tridents as they carry buckets of a disgusting viscous substance from the pool and pour it into the magma. The slaves appear to be wearing black skull caps. There is another Deep One that is much bigger than its compatriots that is waving its arms about. It is known as a Shoggoth Tusha or Shoggoth Priest. It holds blobs of grey quivering slime in its claws and gestures towards the pool and then the magma pit gurgling incantations. There's a pile of tools, crates and raw materials nearby, and some tools that resemble welders. These are alien welding devices and can be used as a weapon if needed. There are actually two pools, the quiet pool and the bubbling pool. The quiet pool has an exit to the sea and is how Deep Ones enter the chamber. The bubbling pool is murky and the humans take the gloop from it to the magma pit. The strange headgear are actually parts of a Shoggoth and are control devices that the Tushar monitors. There is a cage here filled with victims kidnapped by the Order, waiting for death as either sacrifices or to be slaves for the Tushar. There are around a dozen here, mostly fishermen and sailors, but maybe also some new China members caught while scouting. Captured investigators can also be found here. The door is shut with a magnetic lock that only Sir Aubrey has a key to, and it is hard to open. Any prisoners here are likely driven insane and may cause a disturbance should the investigators show up. The statue of the bloated woman is facing a wall and has over 100 severed human arms hanging from its tentacles. This does of course cause sand loss. The Order's characters decorate the floor in front of it and are blood-stained. As per the statue in Ho Fang's home, the metal is virtually indestructible. If the investigators have the Find Gate spell, they can discover that it is a gate that Nyarlathotep comes through to appear as the bloated woman. Not far from the base of the statue is a staircase that leads to a chamber cut into the volcano that overlooks the statue and rocket. There is a stone sacrificial altar here that bears many cuts, and both it and the floor are stained with blood. We have the Egyptian room, which is Sir Aubrey's place of relaxation. It is covered in Egyptian artefacts of all kinds worth around $1 million. If not leading a ritual, there is a 50% chance that he is here. It is sealed off from the rest of the complex and is difficult to find. There is also a throne here. Behind the throne is another smaller room made to look like an Egyptian burial chamber, replete with an ornate marble sarcophagus with Sir Aubrey's face carved into it. When the lid is closed, a vial inside releases a gas that puts the person in suspended animation for 8 months. We also have Sir Aubrey's workshop, accessed via 2 thick doors. They contain a marine chronometer like the others throughout the campaign, and various tables strewn with machine parts. On the centre table is a large metal unit that looks like a domed lemon juicer. Scientist types can figure out with the right rolls that this is probably the nose of the rocket. It is crammed full of tiny wheels and multicoloured wires and small panels with strange geometric designs carved on them. The electronics are way beyond any scientist in the investigators group, though it can be deduced that it is some sort of positioning and trigger mechanism that is designed to do something when a particular combination of time and atmospheric pressure are reached. If Sir Aubrey's diaries have been read, this is easier to deduce. It also gives us a box explaining what the Shoggoth Tushar is. The slime bobs that it manipulates are used to control the Shoggoth or its disassembled parts. Those parts are what are on the heads of the human captives and are used to mind control them. The Shoggoth Tushar is always kept protected as they are usually superior members of the race. Should the investigators work out that the rocket is some sort of weapon, then they can figure out that the small cylindrical space in the middle could possibly be where the explosive charge could go. A search of the workshop can turn up a lead casket that contains a metal cylinder that fits perfectly. This is a radium bomb that is designed to scatter radiation over 100 square miles of ocean as a welcome to those coming to Earth. It will explode using the strange meteorite power source, which, when it comes into contact with the radium, will for a split second break open the fabric of reality and open the path. The warhead emits dangerous radiation if removed from the shielding, with the effects the same as the thing in the firebox. The warhead is connected to the arming mechanism in a simple fashion. It cannot explode by itself, and should the trigger housing be destroyed, it will take around a year to rebuild, though Sir Aubrey has a prototype he can use in this instance, though this could cause unwanted effects. The guidance system may still be en route to Shanghai depending on when they intercepted them in England, but again Sir Aubrey can use earlier prototypes. The investigators can sabotage the devices, more on that in a bit. Also strewn across the table are plans and blueprints on how to assemble the rocket and warhead. Amongst which is a letter from Edward Gavigan detailed here, and a telegram from Robert Houston which is here. The writing on the blueprint is in Yithian, and it is also extremely scientific. This could actually not be too much of a problem for them if they've met Gakakatak, as they may already be aware of what is going on. The military of many nations around the world will be very interested in these plans, amongst which the Japanese already suspect a weapon is being built. Should they be able to completely work out what is going on, they get a bonus die to sabotage it. The tools here are also strange as they seem to not be built for human hands and are almost impossible to work out. The chronometer is extremely high quality, though it is set 8 hours earlier than the current time, the difference in GMT and East China time. As well as all of this are Sir Aubrey's diaries dating from 1921 to 1925. A few selected entries are available as handouts here. Roger Carlyle is mentioned, as is Houston, however Jackson Elias is not. If the investigators have already visited Kenya and seen the birth of the spawn of Nyarlathotep, then that entry is there. There is also a passage that mentions the children of the Great Cthulhu that talks about the Deep Ones sent after Jack Brady in the Seamen's Club in Shanghai. Should Captain Isoge be here, he will do everything he can to get hold of the plans and will abandon the investigators to get them to his superiors if he needs to. If he can't, he will destroy them so nobody can build the weapon. If he escapes, he radios in a massive naval bombardment that blows the island and rocket out of existence. The investigators should probably hope they are not there when this happens. Next, we move on to the rituals of the Order. On the island, only 2 rituals are held: death rites and breeding rites. On a ritual night, the approach to the island is left unguarded, which means getting there is much easier. If they have cult robes, they should be able to easily infiltrate the ceremony. Sir Aubrey normally performs these normal rites. However, on a special evening when the bloated woman is to be summoned, Ho Fang also attends to officiate. The death rites are held for the cultists, while the breeding rites are held between the Deep Ones and selected cult volunteers when it is deemed necessary for the continued survival of the village and the Deep One colony, and at the start and end of the typhoon season. These are held to increase the bloated woman's congregation. Around a third of the females involved become pregnant and give birth. The death rites are a particularly grim spectacle, with hours of chanting and dancing and at least one victim sacrificed, being killed by their arms being severed and bled to death. These usually have 50 to 80 attendees and follow the lunar calendar. These rituals are accompanied by banging gongs and wailing bamboo flutes, while the cultists wear voluminous robes to symbolise the cosmic bulk of the bloated woman. On those occasions, when Ho Fang leads the rites, the bloated woman appears and devours the sacrifices, and then speaks to the cultists in perfect refined Shanghainese, encouraging blind obedience. This is, of course, sanity draining. It also gives us some more information on the bloated woman, giving a full description of her avatar. She appears as a 600-pound, 7-foot-tall woman-like horror, with tentacles instead of arms that sprout from rolls of sickly yellow-grey flesh. It has 4 lumpy chins, each with their own fanged mouth with multiple shorter tentacles all over the rest of the body. It wears a voluminous yellow and black gown of silk and has 6 sickles hanging from the belt. Also, the black fan is tucked into the belt, which when held under the eyes allows the bloated woman to take on the appearance of a beautiful Chinese maiden by pulling all attention to the eyes. When the fan is removed, the true horror is revealed. This is used to seduce men and women with degenerate desires before crushing them underneath its bulk. So then we move on to the special ritual on the day of opening. This takes place on January the 14th, 1926. The island will hold as many of the Order of the Bloated Woman as can get there, as everybody wants to take part. This will be between 250 to 750 people, with some travelling from far and wide. So many people heading towards a small atoll in the middle of nowhere may draw the attention of the authorities patrolling the sea, particularly the British, American and Japanese. With so many there, it is impossible to accommodate everyone, with many remaining outside the volcano. Ho Fang will be there, but Carl Stanford will not be. Should the investigators have been captured while on the island, the villagers will keep them alive as particularly auspicious sacrifices on Sir Aubrey's instructions. Ho Fang guides the congregation in 7 hours of chanting while the contact Nyarlathotep spell is cast and the god appears as the bloated woman. Ho then dedicates the assembly to the god and rejoices in the existence of the great old ones and the outer gods. The bloated woman then freezes in place and will not move again until the opening of the Great Gate. Ho Fang at the exact second begins to speak the awful words of the ritual while Sir Aubrey prepares to launch the rocket. If Ho Fang is unavailable for any reason, Sir Aubrey or even Nitocris can step in and lead it. 25 minutes before the Great Gate opens, Sir Aubrey tells hand-picked cultists to cut through the rocket's supports using welders. Once freed, it sinks into the magma, killing all who freed it as it boils over. At 15 minutes before the opening of the Great Gate, explosive charges blow away the cap of the cone and it launches upwards, heading towards the Indian Ocean. At the right moment, Sir Aubrey takes over from Ho Fang and intones the final words as do the cohorts under the continent. The rocket explodes and the gate is opened. The bloated woman wakes roaring in triumph as the world is one step nearer to oblivion. At this point, Sir Aubrey heads to his sarcophagus to rest, waking months later, ready to unleash new horror on the world. Of course, the aim here is for the investigators to somehow foil the ritual, and there are a number of methods of how they can throw a spanner into the works. The detonation of the rocket is required to tear open a hole in reality quickly, and the cultists gathered on Grey Dragon Island are a necessary part of this, as their chanting supports the opening as well as calling things from outside to our world. The absence of the rocket still allows the gate to be opened by the gathering in Kenya, but it will take far longer, requiring all other cult members worldwide to participate locally. The rite in Kenya, however, is essential to make the Great Gate permanent, and the absence of this or the rocket only makes it temporary. The first method of disruption is as simple as messing with the chronometers. Simply setting Sir Aubrey's 10 to 20 minutes ahead would completely derail it, putting it out of phase with the other rites, as it would miss the total eclipse. Sir Aubrey has already thought of this, however, as Nyarlathotep could inform him about this each day as he winds it up. The investigators need to be lucky in this instance. It may also be possible that he has mentioned the need for split-second cross-continental coordination in his diary. Destroying the one on the island is only half effective, as the one in the Dark Mistress is correct. Destroying them on the day of the ritual is the best option. It mentions the problems inherent in the prototype guidance system here, saying that some of them don't work as they're meant to, and again it requires luck. They could destroy the trigger physically or make a subtle internal alteration to it to make the activation impossible. If this is done close to the time of the ritual and is obvious, then Sir Aubrey has time to replace it with a prototype. If this is successful, then the rocket does not explode and the Great Gate doesn't open. Similarly, the guidance system can be tampered with, giving a bonus die to attempts if they've seen the schematics. They can destroy the warhead. If they decide to throw it into the magma pit, it explodes in D6 plus 1 minutes, wiping out the island and leaving the area radioactive for around 1600 years. Though this would kill the investigators, they would most likely succeed in stopping the opening of the Great Gate. The investigators could even cut through the girder supports holding the rocket in place, plunging it into the magma, then launching it into the volcano cone. The following explosion would kill everyone in the chamber. There is also the option to destroy the volcano, which would take 20 tons of dynamite or 8 tons of nitroglycerin. Naval guns could also do this from afar, though only Captain Isoge has the influence to bring this to bear. The island is unclaimed, so only permission from above him is needed. Of course, a naval bombardment could also set off Sir Aubrey's radium bomb. Also, the sea in a 50-mile wide radius of the island is whipped into a frenzy. Causing the rocket to trigger at the wrong time or in the wrong place doesn't itself stop the Great Gate from opening, though it does delay it unless the Cult of the Bloody Tongue in Kenya has been dealt with and the Eye of Light and Darkness wards the site. Anything coming through is severely hampered by the cultists on Grey Dragon Island being wiped out. Similarly, if cults in Australia and Egypt have been delayed or wiped out and the Eye of Light and Darkness is still there, then this makes victory more possible. It is worth bearing in mind that unless all of the ritual sites are warded and cults taken down, then this can be started again at some point in the future when the stars are right. Finally, we have the conclusion. Should the investigators destroy the rocket and prevent the opening of the Great Gate, then that should be a particularly satisfying conclusion to the entire campaign, depending on the order by which they tackle the scenario. It is worth bearing in mind that should they destroy the rocket well before it's due to fly, then their enemies are powerful and fully aware of their threat and will put everything they can into bringing about the downfall of the investigators. Also, the danger of Nyarlathotep's spawn may still be a possibility in addition to Nitocris, and these events have serious repercussions down the line if not dealt with. The cult will build the rocket again, sparing no expense, and find a new site from which to launch it to attempt to open the Great Gate in the future, with Edward Gavigan taking over from Sir Aubrey if the Pale Viper has been killed. If he somehow manages to survive, he will be a thorn in the side of the investigators from that point onward. Finally, in this chapter, we have the rewards for completing it, including what is gained should they take down the bloated woman. This is followed by a full 16 pages of stats for all of the people and things that they can meet. Okay, that concludes part 3 of the China chapter. The next part will be chapter 8, the grand conclusion, as well as the appendices A to D and my final thoughts on the entire campaign.